I am a child Holocaust survivor from Poland. I lived very happily in a suburb of Warsaw, which is the capital of Poland. My father was a rabbi. He was a judge for the Jewish people, and he was also a veterinarian. Now, this is a Hebrew word, it's shocher, but I translate it as a veterinarian because he was one inspecting animals, because Jewish people are not allowed to eat from a sick animal. So he had to know how a veterinarian knows the difference from a healthy part of the body or a sick one. Even the skin has to be very carefully inspected, and broken legs and things like that. So he was really a veterinarian checking if it's kosher. How many of you know what kosher means? Oh, very good. He had a stamp. After he checked the whole animal and he didn't find any bad things about it, he gave a stamp which is kosher, and that's how it was. Now, my father also used to pray and be a cantor in synagogues, but he didn't take money for that. I had two brothers that accompanied him in chanting on Sabbath and holidays. He didn't take money for that. So we lived a very good life. We had an apartment building with 4 apartments, and because we were a big family, we needed 2 apartments from the 4. And when I was born, can you imagine, my sister was 24 years old, and they wanted to kill me. Because they were looking for husbands. My mother had every year and a half or 2 another baby. And when I came, my sister's 24 and 23, you know, they pinched me and I was crying. And my mother said, "Why is Dorothy crying?" That was my Hebrew name. And they said, "We don't know." They wouldn't tell me, "When were you born?" You know, they were very embarrassed that I was born then. But you know, when I was 2 years old and weaned, and I didn't need any more diapers, they loved me very much like a living doll, a little girl, and they took me everywhere. All of a sudden, I got to be loved by so many. I had 8 sisters, 7 actually, and 2 brothers. So I grew up very lovingly. Now, this all changed when the Nazis came, and 1st of September 1939. How did we know the war started? Because I was supposed to go to school that day, to 3rd grade, and my sisters, of course, the older ones, were supposed to go to school for me, and we couldn't go because the bombs were falling and our house shook. Do you know they were so merciless, they even bombed hospitals and orphanages, and we were really lucky that we were not hit in the building. So they walked in on the 3rd day, and you know, I'm 8 years young, and my parents on the street, and I see the Nazis walking with the shiny boots. Everyone had a gun and a helmet, and they were singing. It was pretty scary, but my parents were like my blanket, my security blanket, and I stood really amazed at it. And then when they settled, trouble really started, because the first thing they did, they announced that Jewish children are not allowed to go to school. So what do? I had to go to 3rd grade, and my sister was to the 5th grade. And there was another one that learned in the trade school. 3 were married by then, so they went with their husband. And one sister was working in Warsaw. Of course, she couldn't go. And it was really very scary. And then they announced the next day, placards all over the city, the Jews and Poles had to give away the radios. Why do you think they didn't want us to have radios? What do you do on a radio? You hear what's going on in the world. They didn't want that. So they took away from the Polish people, they gave a place 1 week that we had to bring it in. And soon after that, came another placards all over the city. Only the Jews have to give away the furs. Now, I'm sure that you must have studied about Napoleon. When he went with his army to Russia, they froze to death, and they didn't have food either. So now the Nazis were thinking, even though they made a pact with Stalin, but they were thinking, we'll break it. What's a pact for the Nazis? Nothing. They broke every pact possible. So they wanted to be sure that they'll take away from the Jewish people the furs and make fur blankets so the army can have it at daytime and also warm at nighttime, because Russia is known very, very cold. Now I remember I'm 8 years young and my mother had a fur coat and jacket, and she really didn't want to give it up. So my father said to her, don't worry, dear. When war will be finished, I'll buy you nicer ones. But unfortunately, they didn't live until the war finished. But we kids had cuffs and collars from fur, and we had some boots too, some winter boots with fur. We had to give it all away because we did not want to be caught with not giving away what they demanded. Now, why do you think they didn't take it away from the Polish people? Very simple. Because they wanted the Polish people to collaborate against the Jews. And they did very well, this I can tell you. There were very few that protected the Jews, but I would say 98 or maybe 99% did not. On the contrary, they were happy to turn in a Jew, because if we had a house, they took it over. If we had possessions in the house, they took it over. So this was really a big blow, so we give it away. As soon as they finished getting all the furs, came another placards all over the city, a suburb of Warsaw. Only the Jews have to give away the, the leather goods. Now those days there were no gyms like we have now from rubber. Everything, purses, gloves, muffs, shoes, boots, they all were from leather. So now we had to give away the leather shoes, the leather boots, and everything that was leather. And nobody had anything because they didn't want anything to do with the Nazis, that we didn't do that. So my parents wore slippers, and we kids wore from wooden bottoms were draped over cloth, so it shouldn't fall off the feet. And every time my good father said what they took away, oh, we can live without radios, what else can they do, the Nazis? Took away the furs. What did my father say? Same thing. We can live without furs. What else can they do? You see, you have to understand that the Nazis knew psychologically how to get us lower and lower, and we didn't expect that anything else would follow. So the leather goods was the same thing. We can live without leather. What else can they do? And it was quiet for a while, and they did not allow my father to be the one that checked the meat if it's healthy for Jewish people to eat. Can you imagine, I'm 8 years young, I wore my handed-down coat from my 3.5-year-old sister, long sleeves down to the ankles, and my father couldn't have the knife, because if they would catch him, they would kill him on spot. So the 8-year-old, my sister made a hole in my pocket. It was fall, so it was like a winter coat. And I put the knife in. Sometimes the knife was this big, sometimes it was this big, depends what the animal was. And I held in my pocket the knife, and my father went this way to the place, and I went that way, and then we met. Well, it took a few short weeks only. When we go out, I go this way, and my father goes that way, and they caught him. What did they look for? They looked for the knife. They didn't find it. So, 8 years old, I want you to know, I saw it, and I quickly went home, And when I was out of sight, I ran home to tell my parents what had my mother and my sisters, what happened with my father. They probably will come to the house. We took all the knives out from the kitchen. We had an acre land that led to the forest, and we had a big yard in the back. We put it where the goat and chickens were, and we put it under the ground, and we shouldn't have it in the house. And we stayed in the kitchen, looked out the windows, because our apartment couldn't come from the front. You had to go in and then to inside. So we looked at the kitchen, and sure enough, we saw 2 Nazis come. So my older sister said to my father, run across the road. There was a friend that had a little store, a Jewish one. And they came in, and they said, in German. My sister was studying in Warsaw languages, so she knew very well German. But Yiddish is almost like German anyways. It was really created in Germany after the Hebrews left Palestine or Israel, the old one. So I understood what they said. One said to my sister, where's your father? And that's almost like Yiddish. She says, I don't know. She knew all right, but she wouldn't tell him. When is he coming home? I don't know. So the other one said, we are not eating people. We just want to see how a rabbi looks. And of course, they couldn't get him, so I had 2 brothers. They took him as hostages. And they said, they will be in a jail, and nobody can to visit them or bring them food. And we will release them only when Father comes to us. And there was a headquarters there, of course. So we had a Polish policeman, a sergeant that we knew, a friend. So we sent them to the jail and see how the brothers are doing. And he could not even see them because he was not allowed to. They were orders. Nobody can see them. So we don't know. And one brother was ordained as a rabbi at 17 because he was very smart. And the younger one didn't want to be a rabbi. He told Father he wants to be a plumber. Guess who survived the war? The plumber, not the rabbi. He went together with my parents. So my father, in the meantime, when he went across, he stayed the whole night. And in the morning, my older sister, that she was 19 or 20 years older than me at the time, she dressed him as a woman, put on a skirt, and she gave him a shawl that only the eyes were looking through because he had a small beard and side curls, of course. And she took him like this to Warsaw, to family. Only the eyes, the blue eyes were looking out. So when the train started, my sister said to the Polish people there, she said, that's my mother, she's deaf and dumb. Why do you think she said that? They shouldn't ask her any questions, because my father didn't know Polish well. But the blue eyes really saved him again. So he stayed in Warsaw with friends, and my 2 brothers were in jail, and we knew that the brother that was ordained as a rabbi is not eating or drinking anything. But there was a nice Jewish man that knew my father well, and he collected money to buy the boys out. And we didn't want them, especially the rabbi, to die. So my sister that spoke German, she had blue eyes, blonde hair, and she put on a corset, you know, she cut it in her waist to look nice. And she spoke German perfectly, and she went to the mayor of the city with a small suitcase of money, paper money in rolls. And they let her in to the mayor, and the mayor sits at the desk, and she holds her suitcase, and he gave her a compliment. He said, you're a very pretty young girl, and she knew she's going to succeed. And she said, thank you very much. I have a present for you. Can I put it on your desk? You see, you have to be careful not to just shove it in. It could explode. So she asked first, and she put it down so she could open it this way up, and he saw rolls of money. And she said to him, this is all a present for you. He said, for me? A present? She said, yes. but you have to do me a favor. What's a favor? I have 2 brothers in jail. They sit there for nothing. Could you please sign a release for them? And guess what he did? He signed the release for them, and that's how we got them out. But my father was still in Warsaw because we were afraid that they'll come and look for him again. So it was quiet for a few short months. And then came placards all over the city, because we had a large city and there were 3 parts of Jewish people living. One was connected with the other, 3 of them. And they worked at it, how to work it out, it looked like it. And that's where we had 1 week to move into the place. And my mother and my sister looked for a place in one area where my grandfather lived, because we wanted to be near him. He was an old man. You know, those days, 50, 55 was an old man already. My father was in the late 40s. He also seemed like an old man already those days. So my sister and mother found a place, a room and a kitchen. What do you take in a room and a kitchen? Couldn't take the library of books my father had. We couldn't take any furniture. So we took only the mattresses. And what kind of mattresses were there those days? From straw. If you did not change the straw every spring, what did you get? Bed bugs. So when somebody didn't have money to do it, they had bed bugs. Like now they advertise to change mattresses because the bed bugs isn't working there. So you see, it's almost the same story. So my sister, after she found a room and a kitchen, and it wasn't closed yet, so she went back to Warsaw and she took a chance. She dressed my father again in a long skirt with that shawl, only the blue eyes looking. She took him back to the ghetto because we were sure that maybe they forgot there's a war going on, that they wouldn't remember to pursue it. And it looks like it worked okay. So my father came back to the ghetto, and the ghetto was closed. That means it had fences all around, and there was one street where the Nazis were looking who comes in and who comes out. That's all they watched the ghetto. It was closed. There were no stores, and it was really, the Nazis gave in line a booklet, each one from the Jewish Federation. They knew the family's name. So they gave a booklet, and you had to stand in line for a long time to get a piece of bread and some potatoes. You really couldn't live on it. So my father comes home from the synagogue one day, and we had only the furniture was a little picnic table with 2 benches. So he sat down on the bench, and he took me around. I just turned 9 years young, because my birthday is in December, and this was about 2 or 3 months later. I don't remember exactly. And he took me around, and he said, "You are the only one that can save the family." I'm a young kid. I said, "What do I have to do?" He said, "We'll give you some money, and you will go on the Polish side and bring some bread, potatoes, and a little salt." See, they knew those days that a little salt is very important for your body. And I agreed, and here I know that the Polish people were watching the walls. If they saw a Jew go over the wall, the Germans only watched who comes in and out. They would catch the Jew and say, "All Jews have money. Give me the money, I'll take you to the Nazis." So if somebody had money, what did he do? He gave it to him to save himself. But if somebody didn't have the money, he would take him to the Nazis to be killed. And the Nazis knew very well how to go about it. If a Polish person brought in a Jew, they always gave him something, some speck from a pig, or some coffee, or some sugar. And if a girl did it, a woman, they give her some stockings, or some cigarettes, or a chocolate. That's all they want. They were very poor. They were happy with that. So I knew at 9 years not to go over a wall where they could see me, because they would catch me too. If I come out from the ghetto, I must be Jewish. My looks were helpful for me, because I have dark blue eyes, I had light hair braids, and my Polish is perfect to this day. And I have a Polish face on top of it. So I looked where I can go out. Now my luck was that the Polish people had tea time. They learned from England about 2 o'clock. They had tea time. So they were home drinking tea, or they were having some sandwiches with it. This snack like from lunch to 2. So there weren't many people on the streets. And I looked where people don't go, because I was afraid they might come any minute. So I found a block wall about this high. I looked over, it was a grassy, empty area. So I knew that it's safe to do that, nobody will see me. And I kept going every week through that hole and wall and buying a dark brown bread, some potatoes, and a little salt. I did that next year when I turned 10, I could take a cabbage, a dark bread, potatoes, and a little salt. I was stronger. I threw it over the wall, and I climbed back and forth like that when I had to. And then I did that for 2.5 years, and we ate very sparingly, and nobody was really fat, because from that you cannot get fat. So my father comes from the synagogue, he takes me around, and he said, "You're not going anymore to buy any food." And I got hysterical. I said, "Daddy, we're going to get sick and die. What do you mean I'm not going anymore?" And he calmed me down and he said, "We heard in the synagogue that the Nazis are coming to resettle us." He didn't say to kill us, because many would run away. And many Jews knew that this is to kill us. So you know there were over 20,000 people that really ran away that day. And my father took us around. We were 4 girls not married. The 3 were with their husband, and 2 were in a camp. So we were 4 girls not married, and my brother, the rabbi, was with my parents. And he took us around, and he said, "You must save yourself the best way you know how. Go to our Polish friends and help yourself to save." And my oldest sister was 30 by that time, and she started crying. "We're not going without you. You're going to come with us." And my father said, "I did my commandments. You and my wife and mother got married, have children, and now it's your turn. When the war will be finished, you should do the commandment, what's written in the Torah, get married and have children." And then she stopped crying, and he sent her to the sergeant. Me, he sent to a Polish court reporter, friend of ours, and my 2 sisters he sent to our building. Now remember I told you we had a big, I forgot what I said, an acre land, and the outhouses were there. We only had electricity in the house, not water. We had a pump, a well like that pumped out water. We brought it in, so we didn't have to shower. We had a bathtub in the back. Can you imagine once a week, even the good time, the 3 of us were having a bath in the bathtub at the back, because, and the older ones went to a place where you could have not a shower, but it's called a mikveh, a pool of water, that they wash themselves there. So my parents went and my old sisters, but the younger ones, they're 3 in one bathtub, you can imagine. And hair we washed separately, because we collected rainwater to wash our hair in a basin. So that was all right. We didn't do it in a bathtub. And the 2 sisters, unfortunately, I learned about 15 years ago that they didn't want them in our building. They didn't want to keep them, so they went back to Warsaw, ghetto. And they were taken just before the uprising was in 1943 at Passover. And they were taken with the last transport to be killed. And my parents were taken that day but I must tell you that I went a day before to the court report. There was a low a fence, a wooden one, and there was a road and a sidewalk, but the Nazis did not watch the fences, only the entrance, and nobody saw me. So I knocked on the door of the court reporter, and I said, my father sent me for you to save me. Nobody knew how long the war will be. So we just went from day to daylight. He took me in, and we talked, and I had some supper, and then he put me to sleep. At 6 in the morning, he looks out the window. It was a low fence. He didn't see any Nazis, so he woke me up. My Polish name was Dorka. He said, Dorka, go home. It didn't happen. There are no Germans watching. So what do? I got dressed, and I go home. So I went over the fence, and I walked to the road where I had to cross to go to my parents, and also there were rails from the train. And that was the street down there that the Nazis were looking who comes in and who comes out. And what did I see? I saw a truck full of Nazis. Each one had a gun on him, a rifle, and a helmet, and they were singing. Can you imagine me seeing that? 3 of them I saw, one after the other. They were very slowly coming in. So I ran across the road, across the tracks, and I come home and imagine for the last time, I saw my parents yell at me. That was my goodbye. What are you doing here? Run to Rachel. And I didn't question, because my father's demands were like God's demands. I listened to him. And I ran where Rachel was on the other side. Now I come to a fence that was a link fence, and the Nazis were standing every few feet. But I was oblivious to it, because why? I heard my father run to Rachel. I had to do it. So I go in the middle between the 2 Nazis, and I couldn't make it. It swayed with me back and forth. The left side Nazi comes, looks at my face. What did he see? Blue eyes, a Polish face, and light braids. I had long braids. And he thought I'm Polish. Can you believe the Nazi himself took me over and saved me? To this day, I can't believe it. Because if he knew I'm Jewish, or any link that I'm Jewish, he would shoot me right on the fence. He took me over, and there was a path, and there was the villa of Sergeant. So I went right into the villa. They didn't care. I'm Polish, so why? And I knocked on the door, and I knew the wife, I knew the husband too, the sergeant, and the daughter. But the daughter was partying with German officers. She was seldom home. She was there, and knocked on the door, and I said to her, Pani Koralek, because she knew me and I knew the name. Do you happen to have my sister Rachel? And she said, yes, I have. So she got me in, she took me to her bedroom, and where was my 30-year-old sister? In her bedroom under the bed. And she said to me, you go and join her. Now my sister was always there under the bed, so she had nothing to tell me, but I had so much to tell her. So I told her my story, and we were both shaking. We couldn't cry because we didn't want to scare the Polish woman. So we were there, and the Nazis, when it got dark, they got suspicious the Jews must have snuck through the wall somewhere. So they went over to the Polish side from all sides, not just ours, with German shepherds. And the German shepherds were barking and leading them to the Jews hidden under the houses and gardens on trees. And there was a little forest nearby. And we heard them yelling in German. And the German shepherds we heard, and we heard shooting. They shot over 20,000 people that evening. And that lady was really scared. She came to the bedroom and she said, hey girls, you must leave, I'm scared. You hear what's going on outside. If they come here and they find you, the German shepherd will find you. They'll kill me and you too. So what do? You have to leave. So we came from under the bed, and my oldest sister said, Rachel was her name, and she said to her, so where are we going? It's curfew time. When they'll see somebody moving, they'll shoot and then ask questions. And she said, I'll tell you what. The German people are very much clean, not like the Polish people. When the Polish people built a house, like we did 84 years ago, there was no water, no canalization, and so they had to have the water inside, so we only had electricity. So we needed outhouses. How many of you know outhouses? Oh, you do know. It's a little out. We had two of them because we're a big family, but they were three, so they had one outhouse. So she said to my sister and me, you go to the outhouse and stay there until the morning, and then there is not far away, take the train to another ghetto, and when my husband will hear that that ghetto is going to be also resettled, and then he'll come and let you know. But we didn't believe it, that he'll come, but we had to go anyways. So we went on the train. That time I'm not scared yet. Even the 3 ghettos I ran away, I wasn't scared. And the food that I took for 2.5 years, I wasn't scared. And we went to the other ghetto, and that ghetto was a very small area. It had no fences. It had a hospital, some houses, and there was, on the one side, there was a little stream about this much that you could jump over it. So we stayed there with the family, and they hardly had any food, and we slept. How did we sleep? Against the wall like you're sitting, no blanket, no pillow, very little food, but we were happy that we are safe. And the policeman came like the wife promised, and he was on the other side of the street and yelled over, find me the Kirchenbaum sisters. And there were people that ran away from our city, they knew us, that we're there. So they found us, and we went to that stream. My sister jumped over, sat down with the policeman, but he was in civilian clothes. He didn't want to scare anybody that he was a policeman. And they sat maybe 5 minutes, and she came back and she said, you know, he came to warn us that tomorrow the Nazis are going to resettle us. You know what resettling means the second time, killing. So we jumped over the stream, and we walked a little bit. The first farmer, my sister was the spokeswoman. I'm the kid, you see, 11 years young. So she knocked on the door and she said to the farmer, we are 2 Jewish sisters. Could you please save us? And he said, sure, come to my barn. And in the barn, you know how barn looks, with horses and cows and pigs and chickens, and how it smells too. But he had a ledge that he built out, that he had to feed over there with a ladder coming up. So he told us to go up the ladder, go to the wall, nobody should see our faces, and stay there. Can you imagine, we were there a whole day and a whole night, and the next day, he comes in the morning, he said, hey sisters, you must leave. I'm scared to keep you any longer. How many know what the benefit is of not eating and drinking for a long time? For days? Huh? I can hear you. I can. Pardon? No. It wasn't a concern about that. We didn't need to go to the bathroom because of that, you see. And we stayed there and we had to go, and he said, and that's when I started being scared. I said to my sister, so where are we going? Half crying. She says, you know what? We're going back to our city, because she had grown friends Polish. I had little friends Polish, so it's no use going to them. And we took the train, and when the train started and I was sitting and scared, I caught my hands and I looked like this, not turning my head, but only my eyes. And the train started, and a woman in the compartment, a Polish woman, said to my sister looked more Polish than I. She had high cheeks, she had a different nose, and she had bluer eyes, light hair. And they took her as a Polish woman. And one woman said to her, what are you doing with that Jewish kid? You probably get a lot of money to save her. And my sister said quietly, she said, get up. In Polish, of course. And I got up and we walked out to be on the steps where the steps are when the train stops to go down. And we stayed there until it wasn't too long when the train stopped. Nobody else got off because one station they all could walk, see? They didn't have to take a train. So when the train went away, she said to me, my own sister, we have to separate, otherwise both of us will die. And I cried, so where am I going? And she said, you know what? Let's go to the camp where my sister and her husband and her brother were, and 400 men and 2 women in the kitchen. Let's go there. And we marched from early morning until we came at dusk to the camp. And that camp was not watched by the Nazis because, why would they? The people were filthy. They had no shower, no towel, no soap. They slept on straw. They were bed bugs. Everybody had lice. We had lice too because we didn't wash. We didn't change our thing. So nobody was watching it because the Nazis knew that nobody will take in such a dirty Jew. You see, they really were dirty. They were torn things and here lapels were that they didn't have anything to fix it with. So we walked in, and we went to my sister in the kitchen. There was another woman, and she said, you know, in the morning I'm leaving Dvorala, that's what they call me. That's Dvora is Hebrew, and Dvorala is kind of an endearing Jewish name. And I'm leaving because we cannot be together, we'll die together. So in the morning she left, and I stayed in camp, and I slept with my brother on the 3rd tier near the wall. And the Nazis were coming 3 times a week. Once in the morning before they went out to work, they had to count 10 by 10 if everybody's here. Nobody left. Where would they go? They were happy to get some soup with potatoes and cabbage and a piece of bread. And in the morning they got dark coffee with a piece of bread. That was sustainable. And they made roads for the villagers. And whenever they came, I went up there and I covered myself with a blanket, just like a pillow. And when they went, they didn't stay long after they counted the people. Nobody ever ran away. They were all 402 women. But on the 2nd week, they came with German shepherds. How many of you believe in angels? Let me see. Our Bible is full of angels, and I believe that angels really help me an awful lot. So I go up there and covered myself with the blanket, and you know, the bed bugs were biting, the lice were biting, and I couldn't scratch even because I didn't want to undo the covering. And it came in this time with German shepherds, and they didn't just have one because there were 400 men in barracks, so there were many. And this one in this barrack where my brother slept with me, but he was outside being counted, you see. And they led him near the wall, the German shepherd, and he stood up on the 2nd tier. He looked up, he smelled me all right. Why do you think he didn't bark? Huh? Remember I asked who believes in angels? Because I believe that an angel shut his mouth. I truly do. Because the one Nazi said to the other, and Yiddish, I know, Jewish was made from German, so it's almost the same. So one Nazi said to the other, let's go. There's nobody up there because the dog didn't bark. So I was safe again, and they went. But the leader of the camp, he knew what happened. And after the Germans left with the German shepherds, he came to me. He knew where I was sleeping with my brother, but he was being counted at the post outside. And he said, hey, kiddo, on the ladder. Hey, kiddo. So I uncovered myself because I recognized his voice. And he said, you must leave, because next time the German shepherds will bark. And they'll find you, they'll kill you and me for allowing you to be here. I'm 11 years young, and they were men working and 2 women in the kitchen. So what does an 11-year-old do? So I went down, and my sister knew what happened. My brother went to work, and my brother-in-law was an administrator. He didn't talk to me, but my sister came, and she said to me, you know, it looks like the Nazis are coming to kill us. Why do they come so often now with German Shepherd to count if anybody runs away? So she said, you must leave, because he demanded, he was called a Kapo. A Kapo is a head in German, Kopf. You know how, if anybody knows German. And he's the head of the camp. So she knew that he ousted me, and she had nothing to say. She said to me, you know what? You must go to farmers from house to house if they won't keep you, until if nobody wanted to keep you, then I want you to know it looks like the Nazis will take us soon, and we have a farmer that made a double cellar, and she gave me the address and the name, and I put it in this computer, and I went out, and I knocked on the doors. They kept me mostly over a day or a night out, and it was very, very bad. And here comes 2 weeks. I have 7 or 8 2 weeks time. I came to the end of the village near the forest, and I knocked on the door, and I said, an old lady came, and I said, I'm Jewish, could you please save me? And she says, okay, go to my cornfield, and in the morning I'll bring you next day something to eat. But I was never hungry because I was scared. Everything was closed, I couldn't eat. And so I went to her corn patch, I sat down, and luckily I had a hand-me-down coat from my older sister, so my sleeves were long and up to the ankles, so I was kind of warm. And I stayed there and I prayed to my father again. I said, Daddy, you sent me to save myself. It doesn't look good. Nobody wants me. I go from place to place. And the next day comes a forest ranger with a German Shepherd on the path to go to the village. And when the German Shepherd came parallel to me, where I was sitting, he started barking and pulling him to me. And he sees me sitting down. You are Jewish. I said, I am Polish. Why? I'm Polish, my Polish face, blue eyes, light hair. And he said, don't tell me that you are Polish, because a Polish child wouldn't sit here at daytime. He didn't know that I was there at nighttime too. And he pulled me up, and the dog was barking all the time with his big teeth. To this day, I'm scared of a German Shepherd. And he pulled me up from sitting down by the head, and he said, all Jews have money. Give me the money, I'll take you to the Nazis. I said, I'm Polish, and I don't have any money. I didn't have any. Maybe if I did, I'd give it to him. But I didn't, not even a penny, and he didn't answer me after that. He pulled me out from the corn patch, and here I'm going on the path. And what do? I pray to my Rabbi Father, Daddy, you sent me in my mind, you sent me to save myself, but now I'm going to die. I can't run away. Why do you think I didn't try to run away from his grip? What did he have that I was afraid of? The dog, right? I'd rather be killed by a bullet from a Nazi than be bitten alive by a German Shepherd. So I went along, and I was resigned to be dead. There comes the miracle. You know that everybody has 2 angels. One that you dream and they give you ideas, and if you know how to interpret, then you're okay. I know how to interpret the dream. I learned it in Warsaw. The woman that came, the lady that told me she'll bring me food, she just happened to come out at the time when I was pulled on the path to the Germans. And I saw her come out. She was an old lady, having something in her hand. And I didn't know that she knows him. And when she met us on the path, she knew him. And she took a finger to his face and started yelling, you call yourself a good Christian? I see you in church every Sunday. Leave the child alone. And he did. And here I am. Miracle again. I'm telling you, I have miracles all over again. Something left me. And she gave me the food, and she said, you cannot stay here anymore. I said, so where am I going? 11 years. I thought at least I'm going in the field, and she'll give me something to eat. So I took the sandwich, and for the life of me, I didn't eat it. And she said, go to the forest. And here is the angel again appearing to me unknowingly. Had I gone to the right, I wouldn't be here. Had I gone to the middle, I wouldn't be here. I don't know why I kept going to the left. And when I couldn't go anymore, I was tired, it was night, I sat against a tree, and what did I do again? Pray to my Father. I said, nobody wants me, Daddy. I don't know what I'll do. I'm in a forest, I don't know where I'm going. And then I walked again, and it was a dense forest. I didn't have a watch, and I didn't know what time it is. I came to the edge of the forest, and I hear movements, the horses and the carriages. So I knew the farmers are coming to sell their goods, that curfew is over. So I go out of the forest, and I don't believe my eyes. I am in my home city. How did I get there? Who took me there? See what I mean? And over the street, there is a one-room hut for my former maid. Now, how did I know that she lives there? Because we had two maids. We were a big family, 2 apartments, see? So this maid was a widow, and if she didn't come, my mother knew that somebody is sick. And I was always available, of the youngest, you see? So she gave me food, and she said, go to Pavlova. That was and she said, somebody must be sick, give her some food. She was a poor woman, a Polish poor woman. So that's how I knew the hut. If she wouldn't send me, I didn't know. So I knock on the door, and she comes out. I said, Pani Pavlova, half crying, I don't have where to go, please keep me. So she took me in, and her kid woke up half asleep. There must be 8 or 10, something like that by then. And she put her finger to each face of the child. I will kill you if you tell anybody that Dorka is here. You know, when you tell a child with anger, they really think that you mean it. So they went back to sleep, and I was there. She was a very poor woman. She shared with me a piece of bread, and she made some cabbage soup with potatoes. She said, I don't know where she took the money. But when somebody knocked that they want to come inside, where could I hide? Under the bed. And there comes the story with the bed bugs. And I had lice in my head. I didn't have changes of clothes, and I didn't wash myself. So the bed bugs were falling on me, biting me. And I was afraid to scratch you, because you can hear scratches. So I even put my hand over my face, not to cough or sneeze or breathe hard even. And that's how I did many times. But one time, I was there a long time, and here comes the 2 weeks again. And after I came out, I was a long time there. She said to me, you cannot be here anymore. You have to leave. Where am I leaving? I didn't know where to go. I know, where will I go? I can't be anywhere, nobody wants me. So just imagine, I'm 11 years young, and I stay, the door is at my back. And what did I do again? Who knows? I prayed to my Father. I said, Daddy, nobody wants me. You send me out to save myself, but I'm going to die. Where will I go? And I tell the children, and I tell you too, that the head is just like a computer. You can store information, and all of a sudden you'll remember. So I stood there, and after praying, the light went on, and I remember what my sister said before I left the camp. In case that I won't have where to be and they escape in time, that I should go there. So I go back to the farm, but not through the forest. It was a dense forest, I wouldn't know how to go. So I went with the train that was going, not the train, the rails that was going. There was a one-way rail. It didn't go often. One way this way and one way that way. So I had no money for the rail. So I walked near the rails. I'm halfway, it's about over an hour and a half walking. Halfway through, two men come. I'm 11 years young, and I never knew what sex is that time. And they knocked me down, and one said to me, one held me down, the other one said, "How come you're not developed yet?" I don't know where I took the brains to say, "Don't you touch me. I just came back from the hospital, I'm sick inside." You know, they left me. And now I'm going back to the farm again through the rails, and I know that nobody will do anything bad to me because I'm sick inside. If they left me, I knew that everybody will leave me. So I go to the farm. It was really early morning, and I didn't see many people out, but even if I would never ask them where the street, the number is, because I didn't want to give away my family where they are. I'm a stranger after all, right away they think I'm Jewish. So I walked looking for the street, and I found the street, and the number was easy to find. And it was too light outside, so I didn't want to endanger my family. I went to her garden. How many of you know how a rhubarb grows? You do? Well, we had rhubarb at home too. We grew a lot of vegetables. It's a big leaf, and a stalk comes out. So I went to her garden under the rhubarb leaves, and I stayed there until it got dusk, dark, and then I knocked at the door, and I knew her name. I said, "Pani Osso, Lady Osso, do you happen to have my brother-in-law, his wife, and a brother of mine?" She said, "Yes, I found heaven again." She took me down the cellar, and then she had, at the end of the cellar, there was a quarter, like cut out a little bit to go down, and she had on top wood and things, so they shouldn't see when somebody comes in that there is down to go. She took it all off, and she said, "Go down, and there is the other cellar." So I went down, and the cellar was very dark. There was only a half-block brick for air, and we couldn't talk loud because you could hear upstairs what's going on down here. So we whispered. My brother didn't say a word, my brother-in-law didn't, but my sister was sitting on my brother's side of the bed, and she said to me, "You know, you are the youngest, and by right we should really keep you here. But look how we live, in the dark, we whisper. All we get is a bread that gets stale before they finish it, and sauerkraut, they could go into the cellar to eat, that's all they had. But you stand a good chance to go and be a mother's helper in Warsaw." So she said, "We'll give you some money, and in the morning you will go to the church, to our friend that kept the books, you see, who was born, who got married, and who died. They have no divorces even now. So go to the church and ask her to give you a birth certificate. And then you go to Warsaw." She gave me 2.5 zloty, which is like $2.50 in 1942 was a lot of money. Everything was very, very cheap in 1942. So I knew it's a lot of money, and when it was morning, they didn't have a watch either. So when we heard people talking up there and walking, she said, "Curfew is over, so you can go and take the train," because I had some money now, and go to Maliszewska, to our friend from the church. You see, every church had a little house beside where the family lived and took the books, who died, who was born, and who get married. So I did that, but I wasn't scared now of men, so why should I spend money on the train when I could go safely again? You see, those days the knees didn't hurt me. So I marched again through the rails to my city, and I go to our friend in the little house near the church. I knock on the door, and I get scared the life out of me. She opens the door, and she knew that I am Jewish, and she yelled at me, "What are you doing here?" I was like this because I came to a friend, and here she yells at me. And I caught my breath, and I stopped shaking, and I said, "Pani Maliszewska," which means Lady Maliszewska, "please give me a Polish certificate, so I'll have a Polish name."